Raiders OTAs roll on Phase 3, Day 2. You'll hear from head coach Pete Carroll, plus a few of the players, and get to know Ashton Jeanty just a little bit more. That's coming up on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for May 22nd, 2025.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, you know we appreciate that. You're checking us out by way of the YouTube page. We appreciate that as well. Each and every day, because of your consistent support, the show continues to grow, and the great job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good. And believe me, it's hard to make us look good and sound good on YouTube, but Ari does a great job every day. He takes a lot of pride in his work, so we shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, 707-654-4693. Normally, we have your calls and texts, even sometimes some tweets. Not today. Normally, we close out the show in segment number 3. Today, had a really good conversation, a phenomenal conversation, as a matter of fact, with Ronnie Braxton. He is Ashton Jeanty's trainer at RealSuperiorAthletics.com. Fantastic job. He's out of Dallas, Texas. You may have seen the videos floating around social media of Ashton Jeanty working out in the rain with no socks, no shoes, no shirt on. And yeah, that was Ronnie Braxton that was putting him to work, and he's been his personal trainer since back in high school, has seen every step of the way. He was a guest on my radio show, Unnecessary Roughness, on Raider Nation Radio 920 on Wednesday. Great stuff. Great interview, and not because of me, because of him. So I did not want to do you a disservice and not let you hear that great stuff and let you take another, peek behind the scenes on who Ashton Jeanty is. So you'll actually hear part 1 and part 2 of that conversation. That'll be in segment number 2 and segment number 3. You don't want to miss out. Ronnie Braxton, phenomenal stuff, all things Ashton Jeanty. That's in segment number 2. In segment number 3. Here in segment number 1, as I always do, just news and notes of the day. And this time it actually has to do with some football activities, as day 2 of phase 3 of OTAs were going on with the Silver and Black. So, as I mentioned on Wednesday's show, that because of my radio show on ESPN, don't have an opportunity to be out there for the whole time of practice. And practice went from, 10:30 to 12:15 on Wednesday. So my radio show got wrapped up at noon Pacific time. I immediately made a beeline over to the Intermountain Health Performance Center. I sent a message over to Cam and Will over with the Raiders and was like, hey, I'm going to be coming in hot, man. I get off the radio at 12. I'll be right there in time for the post-practice, media sessions, which was great. Got there right in time. They helped me get in, no problem. Slid in, parked the car, boom, was ready to go. Got an opportunity to hear from head coach Pete Carroll, ask him a couple questions. Got to hear from Max Crosby, Brock Bowers, and Malcolm Kuntz. So was able to get questions in and listen to what they had to say. And obviously, this is a good time of year. These guys like to be back out there on the grass. And in phase 3, remember, this is when offense can go against defense. You can have 11 on 11. It's a little bit closer to actual practices. Again, no pads, no hitting, none of that stuff. But it's a fun time of the OTAs and the different phases that they have, just because, again, you start to really understand what these guys are trying to achieve. Obviously having a little bit more speed and, having a little tempo to practice and kind of letting these players know what you're expecting if you're the head coach or not. So speaking of the head coach, he actually opened the post-practice media session and little, press conference with his own opening statement. Here's head coach Pete Carroll.
Before you ask me any questions, we're in the middle of phase 3. Now we finally got ourselves a chance where we're working offense, defense, and it's taken us some time to get to this point. We've made a lot of good strides, but now it's obvious how important it is that we work against one another. The way we practice will make us, and so we're off to a really good start. The guys are having fun, and we're working hard, and we're learning a bunch every day.
So that was his opening statement. You heard what he had to say. Before you ask me any questions, let me go ahead and get to this. And I thought that he was going to jump into the Christian Wilkins conversation, because Christian Wilkins, the big defensive tackle, signed a free agent deal last year. Tom Telesco signed him, and he only played 5 games. He went out, he had the Jones fracture, he had surgery, foot went into a walking boot, came out by the end of the season. This offseason, it went back into a walking boot. Now, there's been a lot of questions. A lot of people have been putting out misinformation on what was going on with him. I've seen a lot of people on social media, on YouTube pages saying, oh my gosh, Tashawn Reed from The Athletic just said that Christian Wilkins' foot is still in a boot. He said none of that. Right? He said it was not in a boot in OTAs, which is what's going on. Now, Christian Wilkins was present at practice on Wednesday. He did not participate. He stretched, did not have his helmet on. I saw him doing drills after practice. I saw him working with a personal trainer off to the side, and they were doing some agility drills and working with that foot. But, of course, that was one of the first questions that was asked to head coach Pete Carroll, was about a status update on Christian Wilkins and how his recovery from his injury to his foot is going at this stage of the game.
Where's Christian Wilkins at in his recovery process?
Yeah, this has been a difficult recovery, and he's done everything he needs to do. He's been here every day. He's here early, working hard, but we're still working it, and he's not ready to get back out. And we're in the midst of a long, challenging process here. So, fortunately, there's a lot of time, and we're going to take every bit of it. We've really tried to be really diligent about the way we've worked it and the way we've monitored it and all of that. And he's been on board the whole time. So, but it has been challenging.
Really can appreciate the honesty from Pete Carroll, thinking that he was going to say something like, oh, he's in the building, he's working really hard. Or, yeah, he's here. Right? Because a lot of times coaches will tell you just that. They will keep it as vague as possible. But you heard him use the word, challenging. And this is a difficult injury to overcome. And so it's been a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of conversation about is he or isn't he? Is he going to be healthy or not? The good thing about it is it's late May and there's still plenty of time. It's not like they're preparing for the New England Patriots on Sunday, right? They're not they're not playing the Monday night season opener at Allegiant Stadium against the Chargers, right? There's no games being played. Training camp is not here. So I know some are speculating that, well, maybe he's not going to be in time for training camp. We don't know. But clearly it's something that he's working at, trying to overcome, trying to rehab. They're not going to push him, and that's the best way to go. Don't push a big man with a foot injury. You want him to recover so when he does get back, he's at 100% ready to go, as opposed to trying to rush him back in May for no reason, and then all of a sudden he re-injures himself. So I can appreciate the honesty. I can also appreciate what Pete Carroll said about Christian Wilkins doing everything he's supposed to be doing. Everything they're asking him to do, and then some, he's doing. Getting there early, leaving late. That, to me, is a really good deal. Now, it's funny. I talked to John McClain, who I talk to all the time, got a lot of respect for the general, has been around the NFL for a very long time, and I asked him on Tuesday when he joined my radio show about OTAs and what is it you take away from OTAs? And he said, Q, nothing. I don't take away anything from the OTAs because there's never going to be a time when the season's over and the Raiders win 4 games or they win 8 games and Max Crosby's going to say, well, Q, if we had gone a little harder in OTAs, we would have had a better season. He's like, they're never going to refer to OTAs, or maybe if I was present for that voluntary practice, we would have had a better season. They're never going to say that. So in my mind, I spent, a whole day just kind of thinking about, okay, so OTAs have to be important. I know that reporters might not take much from it, but it's got to be good for something. So when I asked Coach Carroll about it, I basically said, how much of this, because in my mind I thought, okay, how much is evaluation and how much of this is just trying to help form good habits? So I asked him about the forming good habits and how important it is. Coach, how much of this process right now is creating good habits for the players while they're out here?
That's everything. No, that's what this game is about. The game is about working hard enough so that you develop the skills that it takes so that when it comes to game day, comes to whatever the situation that you're facing, you have what it takes to get it done. And you know that you do, because you've established that confidence that comes through the good habits. So, like on the first day out, when we went offense versus defense on Monday, we were a little shabby at some stuff, and the technique stuff that was really clean going into that time frame wasn't quite as sharp as it had been. It's because all of a sudden it was a lot faster, and the guys were a lot better than offense going against the offense and defense going against the defense. And so that's the illustration of why we need our habits to be right. So it doesn't matter who we play or where it is, or Monday night or Thursday night or Sunday afternoon, doesn't matter where we're going or where we're playing, we can bring those habits to life in game time. That's really what my challenge is.
I love that answer right there from Coach Carroll, trying to create good habits. And again, John McClain telling me that, there's nothing he takes away from OTAs actually got me thinking. So I love to listen and I love to think and say, okay, well, it's got to be good for something. It's not like they're just, rolling the ball out there and just having fun because, hey, they want to go outside in the 100-degree heat, right? That's not the case. So I knew it was something, and I didn't know how much evaluation at this stage of the game, because I've heard from different coaches before, like, yeah, we're not really in the evaluation process right now. Okay, so what are you doing? You're in the good habit forming. And you heard Pete Carroll go into, a lengthier response right there about that and how he could tell the difference between even Monday and Wednesday, right? And all of a sudden when they start going offense versus defense, it was a little bit different, right? And you could see that they didn't have those good habits already formed. So I thought that was a really good answer, and I think it helps provide a little clarity to anyone who is not privileged enough to be out there and observe practice or have an opportunity to talk to coach and ask him questions. That really right now, phase 3 and these OTAs is about trying to build and form good habits. I thought that was some really good, intriguing stuff. Just got a couple more sound bites for you real quick. Max Crosby was another guy that we talked to, and he recently had Malcolm Kuntz on his podcast, the Rush podcast, and he was talking about how happy he was to see Malcolm back. And so I asked him about that because, again, Malcolm Kuntz is coming back from an ACL tear. He wasn't practicing, but he was present, and he actually spoke to the media following practice as well, but he was in the pool, going through the rehab session. But you'll hear me ask Max about Malcolm Kuntz being back. Max, what was it like getting Malcolm back after he wasn't able to compete last year?
I'm so excited. Malcolm's, on his way back from the rehab, and like I said before, like Malcolm is literally one of the best teammates I've ever had. He's a great kid. He's all about ball. He loves football, and he's a worker. You know what I mean? He's another guy. Like he reminds me of Brock in that way. Like he's not gonna, talk your ear off. He's a quiet kid, super humble. Came from nothing, and just shows up to work every day with the mindset to get better and just constantly asking questions. So more guys you got like Malcolm Kuntz, like I said again, like you're gonna have a chance. So I miss him. Like I said, he's the best running mate I've ever had, and I can't wait for him to be back on the field with me.
Love that with Max saying that, Malcolm is his best running buddy ever. And it's funny when he says that to me because I think of Unique Ngakoue, and I remember how important and instrumental he was in helping develop Max Crosby. And, everything I've always heard about Unique from Max is how important he was. So for him to take it a step further and say Malcolm's my best guy that I've ever ran with, that gives you a good peek behind the scenes on how much respect he has for Malcolm Kuntz. So I thought that was a really good answer there from Max, who obviously didn't play the whole season last year either because he was banged up. He was just glad to be back out there and healthy as well. The final soundbite comes from Malcolm Kuntz, me asking him about, him saying how tough it was for him to, not be able to be out there and supporting his guys and feeling like he let his team down because of injury. And he's never going to be a lengthy responder. He's not going to sit there and hold big-time conversations. So you'll hear a follow-up from Levi Edwards as well about being out with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby, all those guys being banged up and having to watch from a distance.
Malcolm, you mentioned on Max's podcast that you felt like you let your teammates down, not purposely obviously, but due to injury, and you saw game plans where you said that would be me, that would be me. How did you get through that with your mind and then kind of reshuffle it and get ready for this year?
I think just kind of like getting over it, I guess, because like it's not the end of my career, so like just knowing that I'm going to have another opportunity and just trying to make the best of that whenever it comes. So,
when you think about what happened last season, because it's not just you, it was Max and Christian that also had, injuries. What was it like kind of going through that process with them, and how much of a chip does it put on all you guys' shoulder to really collectively show like, this is what we could have been?
I think it all sucks for all of us. Like all of us, we in the training room seeing games and seeing bad things play out and stuff like that. So I feel like for us, it was just like, I don't know, like it was just a sucky situation. Like it just didn't feel good for anybody. So
Malcolm just happy to be back. And I'll tell you right now, man, I'm happy for him. I really am. Malcolm Kuntz, good dude, breakout season in the second half of 2023. Thought he was going to build on that in 2024, the last year of his contract. Like everything was lining up for him perfectly. And then he tears the ACL and he can't do anything except for sit and watch. And that's the worst feeling ever. So just happy to see him out there smiling, see him happy to be back and knowing that he'll be ready to go 100% sooner rather than later. Also, just got a couple more little nuggets here in segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, little news and notes of the day. The Raiders did make another roster move. Shocking, right? They're going to make a lot of those. They signed linebacker Michael Barrett and waived linebacker Wesley Steiner. Barrett finished, he went to Michigan, finished his 2022 season. That was a breakout year. He started 14 games, had 72 tackles, 5 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks, 2 picks, and 3 pass deflection. Was named third team All Big Ten. He returned to the Wolverines in 2023. That was his final season eligibility, and he won a national championship that year, earned third team All Big Ten selection again, making him 2-time All Big Ten selection. Barrett started all 15 games, finished his final season with 65 tackles, 3 sacks, and 3 forced fumbles. Was selected in the 7th round, 240th overall by the Carolina Panthers, and didn't really do a whole lot in the NFL. 2024, the Panthers traded Barrett to Seattle in exchange for cornerback Michael Jackson, waived on August 27th and re-signed to the practice squad. It was released on September 10th. September 12, 2024, was signed to the Browns practice squad, was released October 8th. On November 30th, 2024, the Packers signed Barrett to the practice squad, was elevated for Week 18 on January 5th, 2025. And that's really it. So just another guy that's going to go out there and try to compete. He'll be another camp body. If he could find a spot, if he can find a practice squad spot, cool. He's not going to all of a sudden be the solution for anyone who is concerned about, man, the linebacking room doesn't look good. He's not going to be the guy that's going to be the solution for that position. So just wanted to update you on that. My final note here, and I know I'm a little long here in segment number one, Colts owner Jim Irsay, he actually passed away on Wednesday. The Raiders put out a statement saying the Raiders family was saddened to learn of the passing of Jim Irsay, owner of the Indianapolis Colts and one of the professional football's most passionate stewards. Jim's love of the Colts and appreciation for the NFL was evident in his tireless efforts to promote and improve the game, and his commitment to the Indianapolis community and generosity in his philanthropic efforts touched countless lives. The thoughts of the entire Raider Nation are with his daughters Carly Irsay Gordon, Casey Foyt, and Kaylin Jackson, and the entire Irsay family at this time. So, I believe he was only 65 years old, so was a pretty big shock. I know he wasn't the healthiest dude, but didn't expect to all of a sudden on the day that the owners were meeting in Minneapolis, had their owner meetings, the spring meetings, and the tush push did not get banned. It actually didn't receive as many votes as it needed. It needed 24. It only received 22, so the tush push is still around. It's not going anywhere. Didn't think that we were going to be talking about an owner passing away, but there you go. Jim Irsay of the Indianapolis Colts passed away on Wednesday, I believe at the age of 65. Coming up in segment number 2, part 1 of my conversation with Ronnie Braxton, Ashton Jeanty's trainer at RealSuperiorAthletics.com. Fantastic stuff. You don't want to miss it. Part 1 of that conversation is coming up next on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of the great sponsors here on the show, and that is LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind. It means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, guess what? LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. All right, so Q, you got me. How does it work? I'm glad you asked. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And I got a pro tip for you. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find high-quality hires. Right now, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to jump into part 1 of a great conversation I had on my radio show on Wednesday. Really proud of this conversation. This will probably be on a best of show when I go on vacation. Ronnie Braxton, Ashton Jeanty's trainer, RealSuperiorAthletics.com. He's on Twitter at Ronnie Braxton A1. Fantastic stuff. He joined my radio show to talk all things Ashton Jeanty. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Again, just thought this was a phenomenal conversation. This is just part 1 of that conversation from Wednesday. Check it out. What is it about Ashton Jeanty that you've learned over your training, the time that you've known him? What kind of makes him go?
Well, the thing that stands out the most is that he's consistent every single day you walk in the building. And a lot of athletes at this level, I've been doing this 24 years, you have to remind them the little things about being consistent. And Jeanty shows up with the little things, already instilled from walking barefoot and, foam rolling the right way and, doing all your dynamic warm-ups and prehab exercises to understand that, the body has to take a phase of every season to get to a long career. So he understands those things early, going into the National Football League as a rookie. So, when you ask that question, what stands out from him and everybody else is, he walks in the building already paying attention.
Right. Yeah, he does. And that's something, even the conversations that I've had from him, you could tell that he's definitely paying attention. When it comes to discipline, and we know his background with his father, military, how much does that help in this process that he's very much disciplined like that?
It's a good and it's a flip side to that as well, because sometimes you can be so disciplined that you're robotic and you got to break habits and unnecessary, we call it, a robotic system that you're used to, that, you try to get them to be innovative and creative within their own self. But, the discipline that comes of just understanding who you are and kingdom principles, and as character and integrity, that side of what mom and dad instilled in him from the household, that's why I'm excited to see him as a Raider in the city and the state that he's in, because he brings a different level of discipline, not just in football, but the character of the man when you walk in the room. Like he's truly a good man, and that's the part I like about him.
Ronnie Braxton, RealSuperiorAthletics.com is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920, Unnecessary Roughness. The clip that went viral was, we all saw him training in the rain and going through drills, and then we heard you talking about, the fake Super Bowl champions and talking about Ashton and thinking that he's going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. What is it about those drills? Why is it so important to go through that and deal with that adversity?
Well, I've been training NFL football players for 24 years. I mean, I can go way back, and when I was talking about guys like, you got guys that go to a practice squad team, and they only was on the practice squad for 2 weeks, and that team wins a Super Bowl, and the practice squad guy for 2 weeks says he won a Super Bowl that year. So I give him credit for being Super Bowl champion. So that's why I kind of said what I said. But to take nothing away from being a Super Bowl champion, because it's the ultimate, or should I say the second ultimate reward that you can get in the National Football League. And I think Hall of Fame is the final goal. So, but, when I made that comment, we were getting ready to go train in the rain that day, and it was raining outside, and it was storming, and it was about, 35 degrees. And guys know at the building, it's a safe place, but, we got to go outside. And when it's raining that hard, it don't do no good to have a shirt on. It don't do no good to have socks and shoes on, because it ain't gonna do nothing but weigh you down. And we're on that surface quite a bit, so we understand that ain't no rocks, ain't no hazardous things on the ground. So we understand where we're putting our feet. But other than that, when summertime in Texas, we may train in July at 1 p.m. and it's 115 degrees outside. In early March in Texas, it can get to 10 degrees, 0 degrees. We do get real snow. So in the off season, it's a great chance and great opportunity to get, young guys, in a mode of, training with the lights on, training in the rain, training in the snow, being able to adapt in any element to as you get ready to go in the NFL. And I believe Ashton's going to be able to dominate. Knowing who Chip Kelly and Pete Carroll is, and I was excited for Ashton to get with Chip Kelly, because Chip recruited my son Braylon Braxton at UCLA, and we ended up going a different direction. And now Chip is up there with Ashton. I think it's going to be a match made in heaven, and I'm actually kind of glad he changed that stance, because I've had 3 or 4 or 5 different conversations about that stance, and one of my questions was what if those guys asked you to change it? And I thought that was really intelligent of how Chip asked him to get in the basketball stance and kind of deliver it that way. I thought that was just so outstanding. As a coach, to have that intelligence and get his point across that quick.
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you, how do you thought that was going to, if it was going to change anything with Ashton, or could that be an element to this that actually makes him better?
Well, it's going to make him better, and I think that, that dynamic, and people don't know this about him, like, Jeanty is a phenomenal route runner, and I'm not saying this lightly, because, I'm down here with, Jamar Chase, and I'm seeing, Tyreek Hill and CeeDee Lamb, I'm seeing the best receivers in the National Football League every year, same way you guys are, up close, in person. Mm-hmm. Jeanty runs better routes than probably all of them. I can send you video footage if I have to. In his hand?
Oh, I believe you, Coach. I believe you. Look, who am I to question it? I just like to hear it. I really do. I'm excited. I know Raider Nation is excited about Ashton Jeanty. Again, Ronnie Braxton is with us here on Raider Nation Radio 920. Unnecessary Roughness trains Ashton Jeanty, knows him as well as anyone, if not better. Is there a guy that you look at, you kind of compare Ashton to and say, yeah, I see similarities in his game, and Ashton has the same thing?
I call him a gorilla, cheetah, bird, honey badger, hippopotamus. And it ain't no man you can compare him to, because you got to go get animalistic instincts, because what he's been through and where he's been across the country and how he's been able to become Ashton Jeanty is, I don't compare him to no man. I compare him to an animal. He got a gorilla chest, right? He got eyes like an eagle. He have cheetah feet. He's as vicious as a honey badger, and a honey badger is one of the smallest things. And a hippopotamus bite, is tougher than a lion's, and you got a, wolf-like ears and a bear-like nose. So when you ask me about who I'm comparing him to, it ain't nobody that compare to him in the National Football League. And that's no knock on to the greats that's played the game. But, the guys that's down here around me, I try to put them close to animals and not humans. And that's where, the question becomes, can 100 men whoop a gorilla? Absolutely not. The men is in there playing games. That gorilla is in there in survival mode. So you can't take that away from the gorilla, and you got these men in here playing games.
So a lot of stuff right there to unpack just in segment number one, or part one of the conversation, right? He brought up Jeanty's stance on his own. It's definitely something I was going to ask him about, because Chip Kelly has asked him to change his stance, and he's done it, right? He was straight up and down like Le'Veon Bell, but now he's hunched over in a traditional running back stance, little 2-point stance, hands on the thighs, right? So he's doing that, but it was interesting that he brought it up and thinks it's going to help him get better. Now, I had a guest on my radio show on Wednesday that was 100% against it and thought that, why would you try to change something that's not broken, right? So, but it's interesting that this is his trainer, has been with him since high school, and he said, I've had plenty of conversations with Ashton about that, and he thinks that it was a great idea that Chip Kelly approached it the way he did, and was glad that he got him to switch up his stance, which another thing shows Ashton is very coachable. Right? He's not going to fight back, push back. He's going to do what he's asked to do, and he's going to go out there and give it his best shot and do it at the best of his ability. Not to mention the animal breakdown. When I asked him if there's a running back that he reminds you of, I thought that was cool. And anyone who's into the 100 men versus the gorilla, how cool was that when you hear Ronnie say, no, the men are chilling inside. But I thought that was some really good stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Oh, and by the way, that was just part one of our conversation. Part two coming up, we'll talk about the process of him staying at Boise State as opposed to doing what a lot of college athletes do, which is transferring and get a huge NIL deal. That'll start off segment number 3, part 2 of the conversation with Ronnie Braxton here on Thursday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into part 2 of the great conversation that I had with Ronnie Braxton, Ashton Jeanty's personal trainer. I've been rocking with him since high school, and I keep saying how great the interview was. Make no mistake about it. It's not because of me, right? Whenever I say the interviews are great, it's never because, oh, man, I just asked some great questions. I did this. No. When the interviews are great, the ones that I start fist pumping and start jumping up and down and getting excited and trust and believe, ask Ari during this interview, that's exactly what I was doing. I got a hoodie on, and I was sweating more after celebrating this interview based off what I was hearing from Ronnie, as opposed to me being out at, the Intermountain Health Performance Center with a black hoodie on in the heat, right? I had less sweat out there than I did sitting in Studio Q, fist pumping and getting excited by talking with Ronnie. So trust and believe, anytime I say that it's a great interview, it's not because of me. It's because of them. That's what it's all about. I just love hearing the breakdowns and getting the information, and I feel like he's helping make us all a lot smarter. So part 2, we talk about the process of him staying at Boise State as opposed to him transferring. A lot of athletes do that now. They get opportunities. They have a lot of different schools somehow, some way through the back channels reach out to him and offer him a big deal to hit the transfer portal. Well, Ashton didn't do that. He had the opportunity. Ronnie's going to break that down, as a matter of fact. But here's part 2 of the conversation with Ronnie Braxton from RealSuperiorAthletics.com. What did it tell you about the man who Ashton Jeanty is that he could have, and you know college football better than anyone, he could have gone anywhere he wanted. He could have transferred. He could have got the bag in NIL. He stayed at Boise State.
Well, he had several schools contact me and come meet me in person. And, down here, in our neck of the woods, we Texas football. Let's just say that part. And in Texas football, we got, every school in the country coming through and recruiting our guys. So it wasn't nothing for, a running back coach or an offensive coordinator or a head coach to say, hey, Braxton, tell us, what's going on with Jeanty. But Jeanty and I talked last year. I think it was early January, and we did weigh all the pros and the cons. And at the end of the day, it was a decision that he had to make as a man, and he made the right decision for himself. And I just thank him for picking up the phone and asking me my opinion. And that facet, because you got some kids listen and some kids don't listen, and I thought it was better for him to stay at Boise because he controlled the whole narrative. And believe it or not, I told him in January, I said, you're gonna go to the college football playoffs and you're gonna be up for the Heisman Trophy. And he believed it, and not just believed it, he manifested and made it a revelation. And they took the Heisman Trophy from him. And I tell Deion Sanders, like, that Deion, you stole that from that young man. You did.
Yeah. If Travis Hunter wasn't the electric guy going both ways, and obviously in that Colorado program, it's hand down Ashton Jeanty was going to win that Heisman Trophy.
Ashton Jeanty right now run better routes, has better hands, more dynamic after the catch than Travis Hunter. Travis Hunter can't cover Ashton Jeanty.
I like it. This is phenomenal. Well, Coach, before we let you go, and like I said, man, I definitely appreciate your time. I want to ask about you. You said you've been doing this 24-plus years. You're there at RealSuperiorAthletics.com, on Twitter at Ronnie Braxton, A1. What makes you do this? What is it? Why do you strive to do this and coach up such incredible athletes?
Because I understand the element in the off season is more important than just being preseason and in season. And you got 20 weeks outside of the National Football League that if you hone in on the details and you understand the nutrition and the sleep and the things that Tom Brady was trying to tell young men on how to have a long, successful career, you pay attention to those details of Isaac Bruce and Chris Harris Jr.'s and, the guys that were able to be successful. And, over the years, you take notes from Alonzo Highsmith, and you take, notes from guys, and, you come up with your own formula. And I got my master's degree in exercise physiology. I have a, CSCS and strength and conditioning. So I can go and work for any organization in America. But I just chose to stay out here because I feel like it's a level of education that's being missed that the National Football League or college football or high school football, that if you get it early in high school, that's where, I got Ashton in high school, and then now he's a pro. He's already a pro walking through the door. And that's why, I stayed out here because, my son, Braylon Braxton, he's a college quarterback that went undefeated last year at Marshall University, Conference Player of the Year, MVP of his championship game, #1 touchdown-interception ratio in the country. So you got Anthony Hill, the Texas linebacker, Jordan Tyson, the Arizona State receiver. Then my other son is the All-American corner at Ole Miss. So, all those boys grew up together. So as I was developing and building my family, God told me, when I say God told me, God literally told me. I'm one of those guys, when you see me and you see God or you hear the word God, I'm one of those people that's like, only God could have done that. So That's kind of why I stayed out here, because only God.
I'm not mad at that at all. That's a great testimony right there, Coach. Fantastic stuff. Keep doing what you do. Believe me, I spent 11 years in Texas. I know all about Texas football. I know what that's all about. So you're coaching up some of the best out there. I have no doubt about it. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for your time. And if you don't mind, Coach, we're definitely going to keep in contact. This has been fantastic.
I look forward to the Raiders having a successful, healthy season. And they got a great young man who lead the right way. You can't replace the leadership, and he lead the right way. It got so, and I'll leave it with this. It got so tough on me that he didn't drop balls, he didn't make mistakes, and he paid attention to detail. So when he started making a mistake, I couldn't punish him in the drill because he didn't make any mistakes. So I started making him getting up 30 minutes early. So we get up at 5 a.m. If I catch him making a mistake, it's 4:30 a.m. So I couldn't punish him on the field because he don't make mistakes very often. So you got to take his sleep away from him in the off season.
Again, I can't say it enough. Thought that was some great stuff. Really did. Thought that was some great stuff. And I knew immediately, I told Ari, hey, man, that's going on the podcast. Got to put that on the podcast. I can't hold on to that for myself. Sometimes I, want to bring a soundbite here or a soundbite there. Or, sometimes if I think it's really good, I'll bring the whole thing. But maybe squeeze it all into one segment. But I was like, you know what? I got to let this bad boy breathe. I got to let this bad boy breathe, man. This was some really, really good stuff. And trust and believe, there's so much to still talk about. Even some of the sound bites that you heard from head coach Pete Carroll, we could break that up and have our own conversations, break down. Christian Wilkins, sit there and have a whole conversation on Christian Wilkins. Sit there and have a whole conversation on Ashton Jeanty and his running back stance. I say that because I did that. My radio show, 3 hours long, 3 hours strong, we went into great detail about those two subjects amongst others. But I mean, that I know that we can have so many good conversations, and we will. As we close things out tomorrow, we'll have more news and notes. Right, the last day of the OTAs for this little three-day session, as you will, is closed to the media, so it won't be any more media availability. But there's plenty to take away that we'll talk about. We'll have more news and notes. We'll have your calls and texts and tweets. We'll get back to that. 707-654-4693 at Ari Produces, at your boy Q254, and of course we'll have plenty of conversation as we close out the week really strong and head you into Memorial Day weekend the right way. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.